Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
All right, everyone. Welcome to today's Redtail webinar on business development. This is the first in a three-part series on creating your sales cycle and using Redtail for prospecting. So it's all about that business development, all about where those next prospects or leads are coming from, and then how to use the CRM for managing all of that incoming business or that potential incoming business, really, because not all prospects pan out, not all leads become prospects, but how can we track where people are falling off in the sales cycle? And I bet you didn't even consider that your CRM would be the place to do that. Because as much as the CRM is a client relationship management system, it's actually also a great place to track your leads and incoming business development. So my name is Haley Mandrup. I'm here with Redtail Malcolm over here. Come here, lay down. Wrong side. There we go. So Redtail Malcolm's here to join us today, talking all about business development and creating your sales cycle. So let's dive on in. So first we're going to start in PowerPoint a little bit because we want to talk about where your business is coming from. Where business is coming from has a direct impact on how you're tracking that new business within the CRM. And what I mean by that is if you're getting massive amounts of leads, like you have a radio show or a television show, and a lot of interested parties are reaching out, you get a lot of names and phone numbers, for example, you might not be putting all of those names into the CRM. It's just not the best way to go about it, because then you're just clogging up your database with a bunch of names that aren't panning out, for example. So, but if you're getting a lot of business through referrals and through existing clients where those leads typically pan out at a higher percentage rate, then you might be entering those contacts in directly to the system. So it's all about whether or not to add them to the CRM, and then if you are going to add them, appropriately labeling them so you know who that person is, where they came from, and more importantly, where your business's relationship is at with that person. So we can indicate all of that, but through where they're coming from. So we've divided it into you're getting business from your existing business and then your new business. What I mean by you're getting additional business from your existing businesses is that you might have events for existing clients where they tell you that they're selling a home or their 401k is ready to roll over or they've just gotten inheritance. They're already an existing client, but there's more opportunities to be had with those existing clients. It's just all about bringing on any assets that were held away or any assets that were not under your management for whatever reason. And then there's, of course, referrals from existing clients. And here we tacked on the wealth transfer as well. So yeah, you might get referrals from existing clients, but your clients' children are built-in referrals as well. So think of your wealth practice as being generational by nature. You already have a bunch of prospects in the system. They're just not labeled that way. They might not be labeled at all. They could be labeled child of client, but they're there and they're built-in prospects. And then there's, of course, client account not under management and new products or services for existing clients. So maybe you've been in the business a long time and you're starting to offer life insurance, or you're starting to offer a new type of investment or new product of some sort. And then you have a new product or service to offer to existing clients. This could also relate to the wealth transfer. And what I mean by that is you might start to offer something like a family planning meeting where you sit down with the parents that have been your clients for however many years, months, days, whatever, and then help them talk to their children about money. So all of those are existing ways within your current book of clients or book of business to go ahead and prospect within that. But let's talk about new business. So new business, you can have events for prospects. A lot of these equate to Social Security seminars, which you can track through the seminar tool in Redtail. Referrals from your center of influence or COI. So that's an industry term, but you might call them a partner or just someone you know in the community who has a relatable business like an attorney or a CPA, someone who you might have a lot of clients in common with. So you can help each other out and mutually refer back and forth. Or if your firm doesn't offer tax services, then you could refer to a tax firm, and then vice versa, they could refer to you. And then, of course, that was those radio shows, podcasts, email marketing, and any kind of mass marketing. There's lots of partners that we have, integration partners, that can help you start to mass market as well. So now that we know where they're coming from or where these new people are coming from, how do we label them in Redtail? Primarily, you're going to label them the status. Now, if you joined us for our other webinars, you're like, oh, I know what that status means. But for anyone new, the status is your relationship with that person, your business's relationship with that person. So who are they to you? Why do they matter? Why do they matter? And what does that status mean? So your status should really be 1 or 2 words that indicates something to you. And here we've built it out into a nice little chart where if someone has the status of lead, in my example, that means that I have a name and contact information, but I don't have much more. I haven't talked to that person. Maybe I got them through radio referral. Lay down. Lay down. Maybe I got them as a referral from an existing client and that's all I got. But I didn't get a lot of information and I haven't certainly not have talked to this person. And then a lead becomes a prospect once I've interacted with that person. We've had some sort of interaction, be it a phone call, maybe a meeting. Your office is going to set a threshold for what bumps them up to prospect. Another common term for this is suspect. Just use whatever terms you're familiar with for your office. And then finally, they get promoted to what we want them to be, an active client. And an active client has a definition too, and that might have a minimum level of assets that they need to become your client, or it might just mean whatever the amount, we have some level of assets under management for this client, or we've offered them some service at some point in time. And that again is going to be up to your office's discretion depending on how you model your billing. It could be if they have ongoing services, they're an active client. If they only paid for a financial plan and nothing further, then you might have a different status for those people to segment them out because they're not necessarily active clients. And then after these 3, we're only talking about these 3 because it's the prospecting series, but it's going to continue through the client life cycle. So it's going to continue on to inactive and deceased. But we're not going to talk about those because we're just worried about getting them to active client for here. The next column is the category. So once I have someone who's a status of lead, which immediately tells me this person is someone that might be interested in my business, but I haven't had an interaction with them, then I'm going to rank them within that relationship. Is this a warm lead? Is this a cold lead? Or is this a lost lead? So a warm lead, I would start everyone as a warm lead. We're hoping that every relationship begins warmly, of course. So that means we've got their name and contact information, they're fresh in the system, and we've got to do some action on them, whether that's a phone call, an email, whatever. Cold, well, they only get moved to cold once there's been no contact from them over a period of time. So if we have an action plan for our warm leads, at some point we're going to move them to cold. We could say that it's a 30-day, a 60-day, a 90-day. You could have a longer sales cycle. But I really would recommend putting a number to that, a finite amount of time, so that you're not constantly bombarding and wasting resources, more importantly, on leads that are not panning out. So try out a 90-day cycle, see if maybe that's too quick for people to make a decision, or maybe that's too long and you're wasting too many resources, or you have just too many leads to sustain that. Those are all the different things you'll have to consider when implementing a new sales cycle within the CRM. And last, this is the sad one. This is when the contact has affirmatively told us, I do not have interest in this, in your services. But That's okay. We're marking them as lost. We're not deleting them. We're not removing them from the system entirely. Instead, we're saying they have no interest at this time, and then we're leaving their contact record around just in case they go ahead and change their mind and come back. That way we can also know, oh, they've been a lead in our system for 3 years, but they finally came around to needing our services. And we're not treating them as new to the business when they're not necessarily. Then prospect, you get the idea, so I'm going to go a little quicker now. Prospect, that means that the contact has scheduled a meeting. So I've called or emailed my warm lead, and they've reached out and said, yes, I want to schedule a meeting. That meeting hits the calendar. Cool. I'm going to change their status to prospect, and they're a hot prospect because the ball is really rolling now, and they've got a meeting on the calendar. We are put to the ground right now. We're ready. It's happening. And then maybe the meeting is held and they don't respond after that. That's okay. They're going to move to a prospect and then cold. So we're reusing those categories for cold to indicate we did have an interaction. They are a prospect, but we move them to cold because there was no further contact. Another sad one, prospect is lost. That's where the contact was not a good fit or maybe not qualified. So you can consider breaking that out into 2 different categories if that's something that matters to you. If you want to say that they're only lost if it said to you they don't want to continue, and then maybe add another category for not qualified, so that if in the future they ever came back and wanted your business, you could indicate to yourself, well, they weren't qualified at that time, maybe they're qualified now. We recommend just lost and then maybe adding a note that they were not qualified, so you have that information on their record. And then the really exciting one, so pending. Because there's a lot of steps to moving over a client's accounts or opening new accounts under your management, they don't switch from prospect to client at the snap of your fingers. Or maybe they do in your office, but we recommend keeping them a prospect and changing their category to pending when they have their first onboarding meeting scheduled. This is commonly called the discovery meeting or exploratory meeting. So it's the one where you're sitting down and actually starting to map out their plan with your office. So that meeting's been scheduled. We're really moving here. And then once an account is actually open, that's when they become an active client. So every time an action happens, they move up in their status. And once they have the status of active client, they start as an A category. Now for us, that indicates they have an AUM under 100,000. You can rank these however your office sees fit. But the goal, of course, is just like they moved from lead to prospect to active client, our goal is also to help them then move from A, AA to AAA. So they're constantly evolving your sales cycle and your client cycle. And then as you continue to grow, your definitions for the 3 ranks of clients move up as well. Your low threshold of AUM under 100K becomes AUM under 500K or 500,000, and it all moves up. And then we did tack on a personal client category to here as well, because maybe there's a friend, a family, or an employee that doesn't fall into your regular sales cycle. So that is something to consider if you have those personal relationships that don't fall into the existing ranking. And then finally, I just wanted to give you all a visual of the sales cycle. So a lead that is warm moves to a prospect that is hot. Prospect that is hot moves to a pending prospect. And then finally, an A client, a AA or a AAA, depending on your definition there and their level of assets that come over. And then a lead cold, a prospect cold, a lead lost, and a prospect lost. That's where that cycle ends. But that's not maybe where your action ends. If they go to lead lost or lead cold or prospect cold, then they can still be put on a drip campaign. That's not a lot of effort for your office, so you're not wasting resources, but still routinely touching them with something like a newsletter or something that will go ahead and bring them through the cycle. Now you may be asking yourself, okay, we've been in PowerPoint, but where does this go in the CRM? I want to start tracking this. We're going there next. So let's jump into the CRM. Now, the first thing to do when you get a prospect or information about someone who might be interested in your business services is to add them to the database. So we're going to click on the plus symbol or the quick add in the top right-hand corner to add a new contact to the database. So we're going to go to contacts over here, and then it's going to ask us, all right, well, who are you adding to the database? Typically, you're going to be adding an individual. That's me, that's you, that's a person. But then you might also have a business or an association that you come in contact with. A business, think of that as 4 walls. The business exists even if no one is there. So that would be Redtail Technology. That's a business. It's not one person. Or that would be the name of your firm because it exists as its own entity. An association, this could be anything from a local association like a Rotary Club, church, school, any community association of any sorts, like maybe an alumni committee or Toastmasters, anything like that. So it's a group, but it's not any one individual. A trust, we all know what that is, right? That's a trust that has its own tax ID number because this record gives a place for that trust's tax ID number. And then a union is the last option. So actually that would be schools, I apologize. So that would be like a union. We have a lot of Raley's grocery stores out here. Raley's has a union, nurses have unions, that type of thing. That's gonna be that type of association or contact record. So we're gonna select individual because individual is what we're most of the time adding. And we're gonna go ahead and enter in an individual's name, a first name and a last name are really all you need to enter this in the system. So we're gonna do, if I can spell here, Kyle Franklin, just somebody that we've got as a prospect. You can fill out all of these additional fields for salutation if they're a doctor, a judge, Mr. and Mrs., whatever you'd like, but really all you need is the first and the last name. And this is what we call Rolodex information. So just like back in the day when you're writing on a Rolodex card, it's that vital information that you need to talk to that person. We need their first name, we need their last name, we might need their job title or their employer, but all that's needed is first and last at the bare minimum. A family name, I would recommend giving them a family name. If we know that they're not married, then that would just be their first and their last name. But if they are married and they have kids, then it would be something like the Franklin family. So that way, when and if they do become a client, or if I want to send communications to my prospects or my leads, it can identify their household through the family name on that type of communication. And that communication could be a broadcast email from within Redtail or a mail merge, which is something through Word. So go ahead and fill it out here when you're adding the contact and save yourself some cleanup time later or risk it not being entered later. Spouse's information can be filled out here as well. It'll create a separate contact record for the spouse because every individual has a different relationship with your business. Kyle might be your lead or your prospect, but their spouse might be the spouse of the prospect or the spouse of the client when they become a client. Or they might have their own assets and also be a client. It just all goes back to how you define that relationship with that person. Addresses, we know what those are. You're going to enter the home, mailing, other, or work, depending on their physical address. Phone number, same idea. Direct dial, fax, home, mobile, other, toll-free, or work. And then email, any email addresses that you have associated with this person. Websites. And then we get to the contact details. So all of that information before, again, was that Rolodex information. When you go to their Rolodex card, you've got their name, their contact info, and then the contact details in Redtail starts to give us CRM information or information about who that person is to your business. And I bet you'll recognize this field, status. That's what we were talking about in those PowerPoint slides. Here I'm going to have the option for lead or prospect or active client. So I'm going to put in a lead because all I have for this person is a name and a phone number. So we'll go ahead and put in a phone number. If that's your phone number, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'll put in a phone number up there and then a status and a category. And their category is going to start with warm because that's how my cycle begins. I consider everyone a warm lead until I'm told otherwise or until it doesn't pan out in a certain number of days. The source is going to be where that person came from. Very important to notate and see where your contacts are coming from or where your different levels of clients are coming from. So we're not only tracking that our clients came from the radio show versus the Dave Ramsey prospect program versus a referral from another client, but then you can start to see which methods of prospecting give you which level of clients or even become clients at all. Maybe you find that you're not getting quality referrals or you're not getting quality leads from your radio program, so you create a more stringent process for those people to be able to schedule meetings with you. All of this information can lead to important data later on. So I'm going to go ahead and put that he came from a marketing list, so I hope that pans out and we get some quality leads from this marketing list. And then referred by doesn't apply in this scenario, but if I had selected a seminar, then I could put the date of the seminar that they attended, or if I hold Social Security versus tax seminars, then I would put Social Security and then the date of that seminar, because all of that information in the referred by field is just as searchable and reportable as the source, the category, and the status. And then if you have multiple advisors in your office, or even if you're just one advisor, you can identify whose client is this going to be when they become a client, or who is the advisor that's in charge of prospecting and communicating to this prospect or lead in their sales cycle. This could be your marketing person, or this could be the advisor that will be servicing their accounts once they become a client. So we're going to go ahead and select our servicing advisor here, and then we're back to some Rolodex info. So we've got gender, got a tax ID number. I likely won't have that for a prospect, so we'll leave, or a lead, so we'll leave that blank. Date of birth, I probably won't have that. I might have marital status, but maybe I don't have the name of the spouse. So now if I put married, I can indicate to me I don't have the spouse's name from this marketing list. I'm going to need to go ahead and get that so I can better talk to this person. And they're not a client, so I'm not going to fill out the client since date, but we'll put a pin in that because the client since date will be very important for filling out once they become a client. And then once they are no longer a client and they terminate with us, we can fill out the client termination date. You can also use this as the lead termination date or the prospect termination date because it wouldn't be applicable as a client termination date at that level. And what I mean by that is if they don't pan out as a lead, they never became a client. So feel free to use this termination date field for whatever status they ended in. If I emailed this prospect and they immediately replied with, "Don't reach out to me anymore, I'm not interested," then I would add their termination date. And just by their status being lead, it indicates to me that they terminated as a lead. They never even made it to client. All helpful for reporting and searching later on. And then I'm going to get to my keywords and tag groups. So maybe I know that this lead is specifically interested in my direct investment services or life insurance. I know that about this lead. Even though they don't already have those services, these keywords for my business services can still indicate to me what I'm prospecting to them about. And then maybe I want to go ahead and sign them up for my email newsletter as well, and definitely my marketing list. And then permissions and roles. So if I have a set of workflows and I have multiple advisors in the office that assign based on roles, then I can go ahead and assign them specific roles, or if only certain people in the database need to be able to see this person, then I can select a team that they're permissioned to as well. If you're interested in more about either of these options for permissions and roles, then I would recommend checking out our recent webinar on permissions, and that's under the help desk icon, the question mark, and then the Redtail help desk. And it's going to be under our Redtail training over here. And really this will give you a bunch of resources, but our webinar last week was actually about permissions and privacy options, so that's a great place to start with learning about only allowing certain users to see certain things within the database. All right, so once we've got all the way down to the end of this contact add page, we have two options. First, we can save this one contact and it'll save their record to the database. They're now searchable and reportable and available to all other users. Or I can save and new. And save and new means I'm going to save this record and then it's going to load a blank page for me to go ahead and add my next prospect or lead. This is a great way to, if you have a stack of business cards that your advisor handed you, or you are the advisor and you have the stack of business cards, then you can click save and new. It brings you to the new page and you just type in all that information, straight up data entry. But we're just going to go ahead and save the contact and go to their contact record. Now, before we go any further on this contacts page, if you're like, well, golly, I have over 100 leads or prospects routinely, are you telling me I have to add each contact individually? Not at all. We have an import available for anyone who wants to import larger number of contacts at one time. So maybe you get a marketing list, or you buy a marketing list, or a list of people who are close to turning 70 and a half. If you have a list in Excel of their information, we have a template that you can fill out, and then we'll import those contacts for you en masse, so you don't have to enter them one by one. If you're interested in that, we're going to go to that help icon again, that question mark, and then Redtail help desk, so the same place I was before. And then I would just utilize the search bar here so we can import from Excel. You can tell I've searched this before. And then just click enter on your keyboard and it's going to bring up any articles that are relevant to what you're looking for. So here's one: can I import contacts from an Excel spreadsheet into the CRM? Wow, that's exactly my question. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that article, and then it'll walk you through how we can help with importing those contacts. So it'll talk to you about how this spreadsheet is set up for you. And most of the time, you're just going to copy the columns from your Excel spreadsheet into our Excel spreadsheet, which is at the very bottom of this document. Click on Automated Import Format. It'll download over here in the bottom left-hand corner, and then you can go ahead and open it. And it'll open an Excel spreadsheet with just a bunch of headers. It's very important not to move the headers around. They're in a specific order because of the system we use to go ahead and import this information goes in that order. But then you can fill out all of that information and copy and paste columns over to it. So we'll open this spreadsheet up, zoom in, and it's going to ask what type is it. That means, is it a business, an individual, a trust, association, or a union? And now you know what all of those are, so you'll be able to fill out individual, or you can put I for individual. And I won't go through the whole spreadsheet, but you get the idea. You'd put in their first name, their last name. If you have the spreadsheet in another Excel document, it's just a matter of copying the entire column and pasting the entire column into our spreadsheet. And you don't have to have every single field filled out here. Just give us what you have. The only things that are mandatory are the first name and the last name for individuals. And any questions on that, always feel free to reach out to us so that we can answer any questions you have about that spreadsheet or how that import works. I'm also not selling anything. That's completely free for us to import those for you. All we ask is that it has a decent number of contacts on it, like 30 or more than you could do through data entry in one sitting. So that's all we ask. So you don't have to enter them one by one, which saves quite a bit of time. But if you do add them individually, we've got our contact here. Under contact details, I can tell that they're a lead and they're warm. This is on a single contact level. So I've added this contact, great. But most of the time when we're dealing with leads, we're dealing with them in bulk because that's just more time effective for us, really. They don't get individual attention because they're not clients yet. So because I've entered them as having a lead status and a warm category, that information is searchable. I can go over to contacts and my advanced search to run a search of all my leads. And the way that I can do that is through the type. It's asking what type of field is this? It's a contact field. It's on the contact record. It's in the contact details. And then the field that we're looking for is their status. The operand is equal to, because we're looking for a specific status in the scenario. And the status we're looking for is lead. So this is going to pull all of my contacts that have a status of lead in the entire database. And that's all they have in common, is that one field. So then from here, I can select all these records, send an email, export them to Excel, run a mail merge and send them a paper newsletter or a holiday card of some sort, or invitation to a seminar, and really just a plethora of other options as well. But it's vital that I label them appropriately on the individual level so that I can report on them en masse. But there's one question we didn't answer, and that's, what if I don't have the status of lead in my database? That's okay. If you don't have the status of lead in your database and you're wanting to add that, any admin in your database can add that status for you. So they can go under their name in the top right-hand corner and click on Manage Your Account. Now I am going to come back to the search, so I'm going to show you a trick here. You can right-click over any link in the CRM and open the link in a new tab. Because the CRM is accessed through a web browser, it'll open a new browser tab up here in the top left-hand corner with the page that I clicked on, but I can still remain on the search too. So I could look at my calendar and my list of contacts and toggle between the two. Or if you have multiple screens, you can move one to one screen and then view them both at the same time. So we're going to remain on the search, but also jump over to the Manage Your Account page and scroll down under Admins Only. Now, if you're not an admin, you're not going to see this page because it's for admins only. But that's okay, because not everyone should be an admin in every database. If they are, you might run into a too many cooks in the kitchen situation, and that's not ideal. So this section is restricted to admins only. Think of this as your resident Redtail expert, or the office manager, the admin, the associate advisor, maybe whoever is setting the standard for how data is entered in Redtail for your office, or managing the CRM, which we do recommend trying to make one person or a core team so that information is input consistently in Redtail. And if it's input consistently, then you can have accurate reports. So there's a big benefit to restricting access to admins to your database. And the page we're looking for is Manage Database Lists. Now, Redtail's an out-of-the-box solution. We package it up so that you can kind of envision opening a box and you can start using it on day one. It's primarily put together with the advisor in mind, but the idea is you can just start using it on day one and jump in. There is limited customization because of that, and that's intentional. You're watching this video because you're interested in seeing how Redtail recommends using the system, and we're really glad that you're here, because one of the ways that we limit your customization is by limiting the number of lists that you can add to or edit within the system. But all of the lists that you have customization rights to are on this page. So under Manage Lists, there are a number of contact fields that you can add to or edit, including status and category. Going way back to where we started, if you don't have the status for lead and prospect, or if you call them suspect, you can add those new statuses to your database. This is going to prevent everyone from being not specified, which is Redtail's built-in status. That's our default. It's not editable because it's one of our system set types. And it's there to help you, really. A not specified status indicates, I don't know who this person is to my business. They need an assigned status. So you'll notice if a contact is created without a status, we will give them the status of not specified because it's not specified who they are to you yet. And then you can add lead, prospect, suspect, all of those high level. You're only going to have 12 to 15 statuses total. You want to limit that number so that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think I've ever seen a case where more than 15 were needed. This also helps simplify your searches. So if you want to pull up all your active clients, you don't have to say, okay, who are my tax clients? Who are my insurance clients? Who are my AA clients, my AAA, my single A, and then create this ginormous search just to get who your active clients are. Instead, let's start very high level. What's this person's relationship to my business? And then we can narrow down from there. Or in our case, who are all my leads? Okay, who are all my leads that are still warm? Or who are all the leads that I've lost? Now we're getting into searches. But one more note on this Manage Database List page is you can add through this Add button in the top right-hand corner and type in a new status name. If I wanted to add suspect to my list here, I could. And then add the contact status. And then your categories on the right-hand side, same idea. You can add to these with our only two system types being the very general option for contact. That's like for a business contact or maybe a center of influence. It's just someone who is a point of reference for your office. And then we've got personal client down here for someone who doesn't fall into your typical ranking. You're not going to be in this page every day. You're not going to be adding a status or a category every single day. But it is good to know that it is here. And even if you're not an admin, it's good to know that it's an option because maybe you run into a situation where you're adding someone to the database and, oh golly, they don't fit into your existing statuses. Then you can start to talk to your Redtail resident expert and say, look, they don't fit in any of our existing status definitions. Where can they fit in, or how can we appropriately label their relationship with us so that they're searchable? So we're going to jump back over to the search in our previous browser tab. And we've got our search going for contact status equal to lead. If I wanted to pull up all my leads, it's very important for me to know that if I have a category of cold, then I might be pulling up all of my leads that are cold. And if I'm going to send a marketing list, I don't want to email those people who already told me don't reach out anymore. So I'm going to limit my search by selecting and narrowing down that criteria. So I'm going to say contact category equal to, and we're going to say we only want our warm leads. And then I'll run my search and it's going to narrow down to all of my warm leads, which you can tell I have so many going on right now. And then I can take my warm leads and send them a targeted communication. Or just like I mentioned that I added a keyword to my leads record if they were interested in insurance services, same idea. You can limit to anyone that has a contact keyword equal to my life insurance. And then I'm going to go ahead and run that keyword, and I get the same contact because he has that criteria. But then it would segment down to who are my leads that were specifically interested in life insurance. And then I can send a targeted communication to those people. And all of this also applies to my prospects that are warm or hot or pending. And I could run this list to see, do I have any prospects that are pending that are interested in life insurance? I don't. But do I have any prospects that are pending? I don't. Do I have any prospects? And then we can go up and go higher level. Okay, we have 93 prospects, so maybe we should reach out to them and offer and see what they're interested in, so we can start to create targeted lists about what they're interested in. Okay, so that encompasses our sales cycle and just putting them into the system so that we can label them appropriately, so that we can search for them appropriately and report on them or communicate with our people who are in the pipeline, leads or prospects. So I'll go back to this image for us. First, someone begins out as a lead that is warm, then they might move to a lead that is lost, a lead that is cold. 1 or 2 words in 1 or 2 fields in Redtail are indicating much more information to you. And that's what I really want you to take away from this webinar, that the status tells you who that person is to your business, and the category tells you at what level they are at in that relationship. So how important are they? A lead, a prospect, a client, that's the most important. They get the best attention. If I have 2 phone calls to return, is it going to be to a client or to a prospect? A client. And then if I have 2 phone calls to return, one to a prospect that's hot and one to a prospect that's pending, which one's more important? The prospect that's pending, because they're about to make that change. Or maybe to you, no, instead you're like, no, to me it's the one that's hot because they're about to decide to come over. However you decide to prioritize that is up to you. But the information that gives you the ability to make that decision is here in the status and category.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.